Jamie, this is Jim.
Hi, Mr. Cameron. How are you, sir?
Geek Fest? Are we going to have a Geek Fest here?
That's what we're all about. My co-host Jerry is on the line with us, too.
Oh, hey, Jerry.
Hi. I'm fine. It's very nice to meet you, Mr. Cameron.
Good. Nice to do it.
We're very excited about this re-release, and you know, I remember reading kind of your disappointment in the first quarter of the year when you knew that Avatar had to leave some of these 3D screens to make room for the other product, the Clash of the Titans and Alice.
I think it would be pretty crazy to say that we were disappointed with any of the release of Avatar. But I think what we saw was a reality that the number of screens, was limiting. That it was a very finite ecosystem. It was big enough, and we're grateful that it was big enough to support one big movie. Because if you really think about it, there was a period of time where it was debatable whether you could even have a big hit movie in 3D. Mm-hmm. But we got past that hurdle, but we didn't get past the second hurdle, which is how do you do two big hit movies at the same time in the marketplace? And that hadn't, it wasn't possible. It's possible now because we've about doubled the number of 3D screens internationally and domestically as well, just in the last 6 months, which is awesome. It means it's all happening, and it's happening at an accelerating rate. But what happened was we lost all of our IMAX screens, most of which were selling out on one day. We went to zero, and that was when Alice in Wonderland came out. So pretty much the next day, I was talking to the IMAX guy, saying, "All right, what's your next opening? What's your next lull in the action that we can come back in?" I mean, I was thinking about it right away.
Well, you've kind of become the official spokesperson and advocate for 3D now.
Right 3D.
Right, the native 3D,
exactly.
which I think more and more filmmakers are getting on board with. I know Scorsese's doing his 3D film, which that's an exciting prospect right there. But have filmmakers approached you and questioned you about the technology since Avatar?
Sure, absolutely. I've done a few tutorials and I've done a few phone calls, and I've run out to the camera shop and talked them through it. The thing I tell any director that wants to get into 3D is just get the camera and just go shoot some stuff for a couple of days, do some tests, learn about stereo space and what you can do, and have fun with it, because instead of fearing it and feeling that it's just a limitation, they should start to think about, all right, how can I create my own style in 3D? How can I make this a new set of colors to paint with, And the problem is that there are actually people who are like professional 3D experts, and the problem with these people is when they get on a set with a director and a DP who are new in 3D, what does the stereo guru do? They interpose themselves all the time and talk about all the things you can't do, as opposed to what they should do, which is stand back and say, y'all just carry on doing what you're doing, it'll be great. Because that's the answer. That's the truth. It's like it shouldn't affect your style that much.
Right.
The 3D should always be value added. It should never be a limitation.
But you've always been so unique in that with each project, it seems like you set out to do the impossible. You set out to show people something they've never seen before, and at the same time, you latch on to very familiar kind of universal themes that appeal to the masses. So with Avatar, what were those universal themes that you wanted to explore, and did people latch on to the aspects of the story that you were expecting them to?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's not too many movie releases that are kind of like a perfect laboratory experiment, but this was one, because you don't do a film that's the highest grossing film of all time across all cultures and markets if it's not firing on all cylinders. So that way, you don't have to dismiss part of it as having not worked. So we know that the action, the visual, all that stuff worked. But we also know kind of pretty definitively that the spirituality, that the environmental themes, the hippie tree hugger stuff that the studio tried to get me to take out, that worked as well. Maybe not for everybody, but for enough of a majority of the viewers that it vindicated itself.
Do not look in her eyes. Césaire. Down, Césaire. Ikran is not horse. When Sahelu is made, Ikran will fly with only one hunter in the whole life. To become Aronu, hunter, you must choose your own Ikran, and he must choose you.
When?
When you are ready.
I think if you look, historically at big Hollywood movies, I'm not talking about small films or documentaries. I'm talking about like big tentpole movies. There certainly haven't been any that I can think of that are environmentally themed or have that kind of conscience.
No, absolutely.
You could say maybe Day After Tomorrow, but that, the science on that was so bad that it kind of was a setback.
Well, Jerry actually had a question about another aspect of the content.
Yeah,
I
think, first of all, my hat's off to you just for making, first of all, the biggest film and ballsiest film about American imperialism I've ever seen.
Well, thank you. Yes, that's there as well.
A lot of you have a lot of directors over the past couple of years, the last decade, have tried to make these films that deal with the themes that you were dealing with, and they fell on their faces. They couldn't do it. They're too preachy or whatever. But here you bring up we were talking to some documentary filmmakers a couple months ago, and I just said that Avatar was probably the biggest cinematic indictment of U.S. imperialism I've ever seen, and does it so well.
When I was writing the film, I was writing the film in early 2005, and I'd written the treatment way back earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And the story didn't change that much from the treatment, but I think some of the influences were, the fact that we were at the peak of the fighting in the Iraq War. We'd gone in 2 years earlier, but the peak of the prolonged sort of combat period.
Right.
And I was just reacting to the fact that I was infuriated by us going into Iraq in the first place. There was certainly plenty of literature and plenty of information around that that there were no WMD before we went in, and that the whole thing was a big pack of lies, which it ultimately proved to be. And I was kind of infuriated by that, and so it sort of leaked into the writing. But it's also by extrapolation, it's also about the entire kind of colonial period and this kind of the whole manifest destiny period of America 150 years ago, where we were just sort of busy, like a juggernaut expanding west and taking everything from the indigenous, and that's going on right now in Brazil. The same issues. Avatar is happening for real right now in Brazil with these big hydroelectric dam projects that are displacing literally tens of thousands of indigenous people from their tribal lands, and they're fighting back. And there was just a situation that happened a couple of weeks ago where 300 Indians from a number of different tribes came out of the rainforest and took 150 construction workers hostage at a dam project, and it was not very far away from where I had just been. When I say not very far by Brazilian standards, it was a couple hundred miles away. But I'm sure some of the same, indigenous people that I had met with there were involved in this other action. These people are fighting for their lives and their way of life right now. So it goes back deep into history, way before Iraq, and it's going to carry on, I think, for some time, at least until we're all one kind of homogenized society wearing blue jeans and eating McDonald's.
What always interested me about this stage in your career, you've made the two highest grossing movies of all time, and you're as successful and you've made as much of a mark on the history of the medium as any director in history. So once you've reached that pinnacle, how do you access where you have yet to grow as an artist?
Well, I think you grow as an artist on every film you do, and I like to challenge myself to work outside my comfort zone on everything I do, whether it's on a small documentary or whether it's on one of these big mega pictures, and that's always going to be the case. I think you just have to be restless, and you have to want to challenge yourself to the maximum, both creatively and technically. And I have to hit both of those quadrants for the project to be exciting enough to want to do. Because the thing is, these projects take a lot out of you, both in terms of time away from the family, just kind of wear and tear, and so they have to be worth it. And to me, they have to be worth it on every level. For me, it might be challenging in terms of some dramatic point that I'm trying to make, or something that I'm trying to get to with the actors, some moment, the creation of an emotion. And one of our biggest challenges in Avatar was to create these powerful emotional moments with CG characters. Mm-hmm. And of course, that all sort of distills back to what the actors created. That was the biggest challenge of the movie, was keeping that emotionality and keeping the process transparent enough that what the actors created was what the characters did, at the end of the day.
Well, your entire career, it's been one incredible accomplishment after another. Can you get kind of turned on by smaller projects, by something that doesn't present those kind of
Probably
obstacles?
not. I mean, I'm a little different than a lot of filmmakers who vary kind of there's a lot of filmmakers that sort of have this idea that there's what I do for the paycheck, and maybe I'll find ways to enjoy it, but it's not really it's not my passion project. And then I'll do some little project in between to kind of assuage that urge to be completely free of studio constraints, and then I'll go back and do another big one just to reestablish myself commercially or whatever. And they oscillate back and forth. I'm not interested in that at all. The way it works for me is I'm either making a big challenging movie, or I'm doing something else. And the something else might be a documentary, it might be ocean exploration, it might be a space project, like literally, I work on space technology projects, or going forward, it's going to be working on environment, global warming and renewable energy issues. So those take the place of those kind of little art movies or little independent films that some filmmakers feel the need to keep in their diet. I figure what I do best is make big, technically challenging movies, and I love it, and that's what I'm going to continue to do, or I'm going to be completely outside of the Hollywood system doing something else.
Well, believe me, we love it too. we're not complaining. Before I let you go, I just wanted to ask you about future projects. I know that you've spoken about the Avatar 2 and 3, and your possible film about Hiroshima. Do you have timelines set for yourself on any of these projects?
It's all in flux right now. I mean, I've got to be very careful about how I pick my battles and the order in which I fight them. Because it's not like I'm 25 years old. And there was a time when I figured, I'll get to that one in 15 years. And after a while, 15 years gets there, and then you make that movie. But I don't see myself running at quite the speed I run right now. When I'm in my 80s. So I got to pick my battles, and I haven't mapped out. We're talking about big projects that take multiple years, and especially if I'm going to do two of them back to back, I've got to figure out the exact timetable. So I haven't announced anything yet. And I don't expect to for probably 6 months at a minimum.
Do you expect?
I mean, everything that you've heard about is still in play, and even a couple that you haven't heard about yet.
Do you expect the Avatar 2 underwater element to be as grueling as your experience on the Abyss? I mean, I don't know how it differs.
Probably not, because it'll be CG. I mean, we'll probably have to figure out a way to do performance capture underwater, which will make it it'll be a little wrinkle that we haven't had to deal with before. But a lot of the underwater stuff can be done without actually being underwater. It can be done, dry for wet, which is how we did it on Avatar.
I'll let you go. I know your schedule's tight today, but thank you so much. We love your work, and can't thank you enough for being on the show with us.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate your enthusiasm, and thanks for the good questions.